Listen well, children, to this story of long ago, when spirits walked closer to our world and jealousy could weave the darkest magic. In a village where palm trees swayed like dancing women, there lived a girl named Adise. Her name meant princess, and truly she was royalty in the eyes of all who knew her. Every morning, Adise would carry her clay pot to the stream, singing songs that made even the birds pause to listen. Her voice floated through the air like honey, sweet and golden. Children would stop their games and follow behind her, clapping their small hands as she sang. "See how that girl shines," the women would whisper as they pounded yam. "Her mother's spirit lives in her smile." Adise's father watched his daughter with eyes full of pride. Since his first wife died bringing this precious child into the world, he had raised her alone. She cooked his meals, mended his clothes, and filled their small hut with laughter that chased away his loneliness. The village elders often said, "That girl has been blessed by the ancestors. Gold follows her footsteps." And indeed, everything Adise touched seemed to flourish. Her yam grew fat and sweet, her chickens laid the finest eggs, and even the most stubborn children obeyed when she spoke gently to them. But happiness, my children, sometimes attracts the wrong kind of attention. Adise's father, growing older and lonely, decided he needed a wife to help manage their home. He chose Nena, a widow from the next village who spoke with a soft voice and kept her eyes downcast when men were present. "She seems humble and good," he told his daughter. "She will be like a mother to you." Adise smiled and welcomed the woman with open arms, not knowing that behind Nena's gentle face lived a heart as cold as the harmattan wind. On the day Nena arrived with her own daughter, Ego, the whole village gathered to welcome the new family. Nena bowed low and spoke sweetly to everyone, her voice like palm wine, smooth and pleasant. "I am so blessed to join such a good man and gain such a beautiful daughter," she said, patting Adise's head with fingers that trembled slightly. But when the celebrations ended and the villagers went home, Nena's mask began to slip. As Adise hummed while preparing the evening meal, her new stepmother's eyes grew sharp and narrow, studying the girl like a hawk watching a fat chicken. That first night, jealousy planted its first seed in Nena's heart. In the weeks that followed, Nena watched as the village continued to favor Adise over her own daughter Ego. When both girls went to the market, traders would smile at Adise and give her the ripest fruits, the freshest fish, the finest palm oil. Ego would return home empty-handed, complaining bitterly. "Mama, they act like I am invisible when she is there," Ego whined, throwing herself onto the mat in frustration. Nena's jaw tightened as she watched suitors visit their compound. Young men would arrive with gifts of cola nuts and palm wine, asking for Adise's hand in marriage. Rich traders, skilled hunters, even the chief's son came calling. But none asked about Ego. "Why does everyone choose her?" Nena muttered under her breath as she stirred the soup with angry strokes. "My daughter is good too. She cooks, she cleans, she obeys. But they see only that girl's face." The final blow came when the wealthiest man in 3 villages, a trader with many cattle and vast farmlands, arrived with his entire family to formally ask for Adise's hand. He brought 30 tubers of yam, 5 goats, and a bride price that made Adise's father weep with joy. That night, as the family celebrated, Nena sat in the shadows, her heart burning with envy like a fire that could not be quenched. When the moon was dark and the village slept, Nena crept into the forbidden forest where the old spirits dwelled. Deep among the twisted trees stood an ancient shrine, its stones blackened by centuries of offerings. She knelt before it, her hands shaking as she poured palm wine onto the earth. "Great Spirit," she whispered, "I need power to change my fortune. My stepdaughter blocks my daughter's path to happiness. Show me how to remove her." The wind stopped blowing. The insects stopped chirping. In the terrible silence, a voice like grinding stones spoke from the darkness. "Innocence is protected by powerful forces," the spirit warned. "To harm the pure-hearted brings consequences. Are you prepared to pay the price?" Nena's hatred had grown too strong for fear. "Yes," she hissed. "I will pay any price." The spirit laughed, a sound like breaking bones. "Then listen carefully. Weave your intentions into a calabash using words of binding. Speak over it for 7 nights while the girl sleeps. On the 7th night, trick her into looking inside while you speak the final word. She will be trapped until someone discovers your secret. And the price? Nena asked. Your own soul will be marked. Justice delayed is not justice denied. But Nena no longer cared about tomorrow. She wanted only today's victory. Back home, Nena began her wicked work in secret. During the day, she played the role of loving stepmother, praising Adi's cooking and helping her prepare for the upcoming wedding. But at night, while the household slept, she sat in the darkness weaving evil intentions into a large calabash. Night after night, she whispered curses and binding spells over the gourd, her fingers moving in patterns the dark spirit had taught her. The calabash began to change, its surface growing smoother, its color deeper, until it gleamed like polished bronze in the moonlight. Adi's father noticed nothing. He was too busy planning his daughter's wedding feast, too happy to see shadows gathering in his own home. When he asked about Nena's late-night movements, she claimed she was praying for the family's continued blessings. She is such a devoted wife, he told his friends. Always concerned about our welfare. Meanwhile, Adiz continued her daily routines, carrying water, cooking meals, and singing the songs that made everyone smile. She had no idea that each note she hummed was being twisted into chains by the woman she called Mother. On the 6th night, as Nena spoke the most powerful binding words, the calabash pulsed with dark energy, as if something alive moved inside its hollow belly. One more night, and the trap would be ready. On the 7th morning, Nena rose early and placed the enchanted calabash in the storeroom behind their hut. She arranged it carefully among the other gourds and pots, hiding it in plain sight. To anyone else, it looked like an ordinary container for storing grain or palm nuts. Adiz, she called sweetly, come help me organize the storeroom. We must prepare storage for your dowry gifts. Adiz came running, her wrapper bright with morning sunshine, her smile warm as she embraced her stepmother. Yes, Mama. I am so grateful for everything you have done to help with the wedding preparations. Nena's heart should have softened at such innocent love, but jealousy had turned it to stone. She led Adiz to the storeroom, chattering about wedding plans while her mind focused on the words the spirit had taught her. Look at this beautiful calabash, Nena said, pointing to her creation. I found it at the market yesterday. The trader said it was blessed by priests to bring prosperity to any household. Why don't you look inside and tell me what you think we should store in it? Adiz knelt trustingly beside the gourd, her face bright with curiosity. She had no reason to fear the woman who had cared for their home these past months. As she leaned forward to peer into the calabash's opening, Nena spoke the final binding word. Kier. The word exploded from Nena's lips like thunder. The moment it left her mouth, the calabash began to glow with an eerie light. A powerful wind rose from nowhere, spinning around Adiz like a whirlpool. Mama, what is happening? Adiz cried, but her voice was already being pulled away from her. The wind grew stronger, sucking at her wrapper, her hair, her very essence. She reached out desperately for something to hold onto, but her hands grasped only air. Her feet left the ground as the terrible force drew her toward the calabash's mouth. Mama, help me, she screamed, but Nena stepped back, watching with cold satisfaction as her stepdaughter was pulled into the enchanted gourd like smoke being drawn into a pipe. In seconds, it was over. The wind died. The light faded. The storeroom fell silent except for the sound of Nena's heavy breathing. The calabash sat innocently among the other containers, showing no sign of the magic that had just occurred. Nena quickly covered the calabash with a thick cloth and pushed it into the darkest corner. Then she ran from the storeroom, tearing at her wrapper and scratching her cheeks until they bled. Help! Help! She screamed, rushing toward the main hut. Adiz is gone. My daughter has been taken. Her husband came running, his face wild with fear. What happened? Where is she? Through fake tears, Nena told her lie. She was helping me in the storeroom, Nena sobbed, clutching her husband's arm. Then some strange men appeared from the forest. They grabbed her and ran away before I could stop them. I tried to fight them, but they were too strong. Adi's father let out a cry that could have wakened the dead. He fell to his knees, beating the ground with his fists. My daughter. My precious daughter. Within minutes, the entire village had gathered. The men grabbed their hunting spears and machetes, ready to pursue the imaginary kidnappers. They searched the forest paths, the neighboring villages, even the distant markets. For days they hunted, following every rumor, chasing every shadow. But how can you find someone who exists in a place between worlds? As the weeks passed with no trace of Adiz, her father aged 10 years in 10 days. His eyes grew hollow, his shoulders bent, and his laughter died completely. He stopped eating regular meals, stopped visiting friends, stopped doing anything except sitting by the door, waiting for a daughter who would never walk through it. The village mourned with him. Women brought food that he barely touched. Men offered comfort that could not heal his broken heart. Children stopped playing their loud games out of respect for his grief. And through it all, Nena played the part of the grieving stepmother, weeping at appropriate moments and offering gentle words that fooled everyone but the spirits. But the spirits, children, have ways of making truth known, even when it is buried deep. 3 nights after Adiz disappeared, strange things began happening around the compound. First, there was the humming. A soft, sweet melody that drifted through the air when the wind was still. It sounded exactly like Adiz's voice, singing the songs she used to sing while carrying water from the stream. The neighbors heard it and whispered among themselves. "Do you hear that? It sounds like..." "Hush," their wives would say quickly. "Do not speak of such things. The grieving father has enough sorrow." But the humming continued, night after night. Sometimes it came from the direction of the storeroom, sometimes from the old baobab tree where Adiz used to sit and weave, sometimes from the path to the stream where her footsteps had worn smooth stones. Nena heard it too, and it filled her with cold fear. She would lie awake at night, listening to her stepdaughter's voice drifting through the darkness like an accusation. When her husband asked about the sound, she claimed it was just the wind in the palm fronds. "Grief can make us hear things that are not there," she told him gently, all the while knowing that what they heard was very real indeed. The village dogs began acting strangely too, whimpering and refusing to go near the storeroom after dark. Even the chickens avoided that area, as if they sensed something their human owners could not. With Adiz gone, Nena pushed her daughter Ego forward like a market trader displaying her best goods. She dressed Ego in fine wrappers that had been meant for Adiz's trousseau, braided her hair with expensive beads, and paraded her through the village at every opportunity. "Look how beautiful my daughter has grown," she would say loudly whenever young men passed by. "She cooks the finest soup, her needlework is excellent, and she comes from a good family." But forcing recognition is like trying to catch smoke with your hands. The more desperately Nena promoted Ego, the more people turned away. Suitors who had once visited regularly stopped coming altogether. When they did encounter Ego at the market or village gatherings, they found her rude and demanding, nothing like the gentle girl who had vanished. "That one has a sharp tongue," the women whispered. Not like sweet Adiz who made everyone feel welcome. Ego grew frustrated and bitter, taking her anger out on anyone within reach. She would snap at servants, complain about every meal, and throw tantrums when things did not go her way. "Why don't they like me as they liked her?" she demanded of her mother. "I am just as pretty, just as capable." But Nena could not explain that goodness cannot be worn like jewelry or faked like borrowed clothes. Character, like cream, rises naturally to the top and cannot be forced. Still, she continued her campaign, growing more desperate as months passed without results. Inside the Calabash, Adiz found herself in a world unlike anything she had ever known. It was not completely dark, nor completely light, but caught in a strange twilight that never changed. The space was larger than the Calabash appeared from outside, stretching away into misty distances that had no clear boundaries. She could not walk in the normal way, but found she could drift from place to place by thinking about movement. There was no hunger or thirst in this place, no heat or cold, no day or night. Time moved differently here, like honey flowing slowly from a pot. At first, she wept for her father, for her lost wedding, for the life that had been stolen from her. But tears in that place felt strange, more like memories of sadness than sadness itself. Slowly, she began to understand that she was not entirely powerless. When she sang, her voice could sometimes slip through the barrier between her prison and the world outside. She could feel her father's grief like a weight in her chest, could sense the village's confusion about her disappearance. Most clearly, she could feel Nena's guilt and fear, burning like a fever in the woman's heart. So Adiz sang. She sang the songs her mother had taught her before she died, songs of hope and faith and endurance. She sang to comfort her father, to remind the village that love does not die with the body, and to let Nena know that evil actions cannot remain hidden forever. 7 years passed like seasons in a dream. In the world outside, Adiz's father grew old before his time, his hair white as cotton, his back bent like a question mark. He never remarried, never laughed again, never stopped hoping that his daughter might somehow return. The village changed around him. Children who had danced to Adiz's songs grew up and had children of their own. New families arrived, old ones moved away. But the humming that came from their compound became part of the village's rhythm, as constant as the sound of grinding corn or pounding yam. Some of the newer residents asked about it, and the older villagers would shake their heads sadly. A girl disappeared from that house long ago, they would say. Her spirit cannot rest. Nena and Ego still lived in the same compound, but they had not prospered as expected. Ego remained unmarried, her sharp temper and demanding ways having driven off every potential suitor. She had grown bitter and angry, blaming everyone but herself for her loneliness. Nena herself had begun to age rapidly, as if the evil she had done was eating her from inside like termites in wood. Her hair grew thin, her skin developed dark spots, and she suffered from headaches that no medicine could cure. At night, she would hear Adiz's voice more clearly than ever, singing songs that seemed to carry messages of coming justice. But she had buried her secret so deep that she almost believed her own lies. The 7th New Yam festival since Adiz's disappearance arrived with great ceremony. The whole village prepared for weeks, decorating their compounds with palm fronds, preparing special foods, and practicing the traditional dances that would honor the harvest. Nena saw this as another opportunity to display ego before the community. She spent their savings on an expensive wrapper of real silk, hired a professional hairdresser to create an elaborate style, and even borrowed jewelry from friends to make her daughter shine. This year, she told Ego firmly, "You will catch a husband. I am sure of it." The festival began at dawn with prayers to the ancestors and offerings of new yam to the village shrine. Then came the dancing, the drumming, and the feasting that would continue until the stars were bright in the sky. Nena pushed Ego to the center of every activity, making sure she was seen by every unmarried man in attendance. But instead of attracting suitors, Ego's desperate eagerness repelled them. She laughed too loudly at jokes that were not funny, pushed herself into conversations where she was not welcome, and criticized other women's clothes and cooking. As the day wore on, people began to avoid her completely. But something else was happening that made everyone uneasy. The humming that usually came only at night was growing stronger during the day, weaving itself through the festival music like a second melody. As the sun began to set on the festival day, a stranger appeared at the edge of the village. He was an old man with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of many lifetimes. In his hand, he carried a staff decorated with cowrie shells and brass bells that chimed softly as he walked. The villagers gathered around him with respect and curiosity. Traveling diviners were always welcome, especially during important celebrations. "Greetings, children of this place," the old man said, his voice carrying clearly across the crowd. "I have traveled many days, following a song carried on the wind. A song of sorrow and injustice that has called to me from far away." The village elder stepped forward. "You are welcome here, wise father. What song do you speak of?" The diviner closed his eyes and listened to the air around him. The humming that had been present all day grew stronger, clearer, until everyone could hear it plainly. "This song," he said simply. "It tells of a pure heart trapped by evil, of truth buried beneath lies, of justice delayed but not denied. The spirits have sent me to find the source of this cry for help. Nenna, who had been standing with Ego near the center of the crowd, felt her blood turn to ice water. She tried to back away quietly, but the diviner's eyes opened and looked directly at her. The song comes from there, he said, pointing toward her compound. The crowd murmured with excitement and fear as the diviner began walking toward Adi's old home. His staff rang softly with each step, and the humming grew louder still, as if responding to his presence. Adi's father, who had been sitting quietly at the edge of the celebration, rose and followed the holy man. His heart pounded with a mixture of hope and terror. Could it be that after 7 years, he might finally learn what had happened to his daughter? Nenna had no choice but to follow, though every step felt like walking toward her own judgment. Ego clung to her mother's arm, confused and frightened by the sudden change in the festival's mood. The diviner moved through the compound like a man who knew exactly where he was going. He paused at the main hut, listened, then shook his head. He tried the kitchen, the sleeping quarters, even the chicken coop. At each place, he would stand still, close his eyes, and listen to something only he could hear. Finally, he approached the storeroom behind the house. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, his staff began to ring like a bell in a windstorm. The humming that had been constant for 7 years suddenly burst into full song, Adi's voice clear and strong as if she were standing right beside them. "Here," the diviner announced. "The trapped soul is here." He raised his staff and struck the ground 3 times. With each strike, every container in the storeroom rattled and shook. Except for one calabash hidden in the dark corner. The diviner moved directly to the cloth-covered calabash as if drawn by invisible ropes. When he pulled away the covering, everyone gasped. The gourd was glowing with a soft, pulsing light, and Adi's song poured from it like water from a broken pot. "What sorcery is this?" breathed the village elder. The diviner turned to face the crowd that had gathered in the doorway. His eyes were sad but determined. "This is the work of someone who let jealousy poison their heart. Someone in this household has imprisoned a living soul within this vessel." Adi's father pushed forward, his face desperate with hope and fear. "Is it my daughter? Is Adi's in there?" "She is," the diviner confirmed. "She has been trapped here for 7 years while her family grieved and searched for her. But the one who did this evil stands among us now." Every eye in the room turned to look at the household members. Adi's father looked confused and innocent. Ego appeared genuinely shocked and frightened. That left only Nenna, who stood frozen like a statue, her face pale as chalk. "Let the guilty one step forward," the diviner commanded. "Justice waits for no one, and truth cannot be hidden from those who know how to look." When Nenna did not move, he pointed his staff directly at her. "Place your hand upon this calabash, woman. Let the spirits judge your innocence or guilt." Nenna's legs began to shake. She knew that touching the calabash would expose everything, but refusing would be just as damning. I don't understand," Nenna stammered, backing away from the diviner's pointing staff. "Why would you suspect me? I loved Adi's like my own daughter. I have grieved for her these 7 years just as much as my husband." But the diviner was not fooled by her protests. "The guilty always speak loudest of their innocence," he said calmly. "If you have nothing to hide, touching this vessel will prove your pure heart. Refuse, and you condemn yourself." Adi's father looked at his wife with growing horror. "Nenna," he whispered, "surely you cannot be afraid to touch it. Tell them you are innocent." All around them, the villagers waited in tense silence. The only sound was Adi's song, flowing from the calabash like a river of pure longing. Finally, knowing she had no choice, Nenna stretched out a trembling hand toward the glowing gourd. The moment her fingers made contact with its surface, the calabash exploded with brilliant light and began to shake violently, as if something powerful was trying to break free from within. Adi's voice rose to a cry that cut through every heart present, "Papa! I am here. I have been here all along." The calabash rattled so hard it nearly flew from the diviner's hands. Sparks of light shot from its surface, and everyone in the storeroom was forced to shield their eyes. Nena snatched her hand back with a scream, but the damage was done. Her guilt stood exposed before the entire village like a snake in bright sunlight. The village elder stepped forward, his face grave with the weight of justice. The spirits have spoken clearly. This woman has committed a great evil against an innocent child. She must face judgment. But the diviner raised his hand. Before we speak of punishment, let us first free the prisoner. 7 years she has waited in darkness. Let her see the light again. He asked the villagers to form a circle around the storeroom, then instructed them to bring white chalk, cola nuts, and palm oil for the ritual of release. As the sun set completely and the full moon rose over the village, he began the sacred ceremony. The diviner drew symbols on the ground around the calabash, each one glowing briefly as he completed it. He sprinkled the chalk in the 4 directions, broke the cola nuts and placed the pieces at the compass points, then poured palm oil in a thin line connecting all the symbols. The village drummers, who had brought their instruments from the festival, began a slow, hypnotic rhythm that seemed to match the pulse of light from the calabash. Spirits of justice, the diviner chanted, we call upon you to break the chains of jealousy and free the innocent. What was bound by hatred, let love release. What was trapped by lies, let truth set free. The calabash began to glow brighter, its light shifting from soft gold to brilliant silver. The humming inside grew louder and more joyful, as if Adiz could sense that rescue was finally coming. Around the circle, every person present felt the power of the moment. The diviner raised his staff high above his head and spoke the words of release. By the power of truth, by the strength of justice, by the love that never dies, be free. He brought the staff down sharply, striking the calabash with all his strength. Crack! The sound was like thunder splitting the sky. A brilliant burst of light exploded from the gourd, so bright that everyone had to close their eyes. The light grew and pulsed, filling the storeroom, spilling out into the compound, reaching up toward the stars themselves. When the light finally faded and the villagers could see again, they gasped in wonder and fear. There, standing where the calabash had been, was Adiz. She looked exactly as she had 7 years ago, young, beautiful, unchanged by time or suffering. Her wrapper was the same bright cloth she had worn on the morning of her disappearance, her hair was still braided in the same style, even her smile was as radiant as ever. But there was something new in her eyes, a depth of wisdom and strength that had not been there before. She had seen into the heart of darkness and emerged with her own light burning even brighter. "Papa," she said softly, and her father let out a cry of pure joy. He rushed to her and fell at her feet, weeping like a child. "My daughter. My precious daughter. I thought I had lost you forever." Adiz lifted him gently and embraced him with all the love that had sustained her through 7 years of imprisonment. Father and daughter held each other while the entire village wept with joy and wonder. 7 years of grief melted away in that moment of reunion, replaced by happiness too deep for words. "Papa," Adiz whispered, stroking her father's white hair, "I never left you completely. Every night, I sang to comfort your heart. Did you hear me?" Through his tears, he nodded. "I heard you, my child, but I thought it was only the wind carrying memories. I should have known, should have searched harder, should have protected you better." "Hush," she said gently. "You could not have known the evil that lived in your own home. You are a good man who sees good in others. That is not a fault, it is a gift." As the father and daughter spoke softly to each other, the villagers began to remember that justice had not yet been fully served. They turned their attention to Nena, who stood frozen at the edge of the circle like a woman turned to stone. The diviner approached her slowly, his staff still glowing with residual power from the ritual. 7 years ago, you made a choice to let jealousy rule your heart. You traded your soul for temporary power over an innocent girl. Now the debt must be paid. Nena found her voice at last, but it came out as a croak. I was protecting my daughter. I only wanted her to have a chance at happiness." "You wanted to steal another's blessings rather than earn your own," the diviner corrected. That path always leads to ruin. As the diviner spoke, the ground beneath Nena's feet began to crack and shift. She tried to run, but her legs would not obey her. She tried to scream, but her voice had become a harsh whisper. The villagers watched in awe and terror as justice took its course. Some said later that Nena's body dissolved like salt in water, vanishing completely into the earth. Others swore they saw her transform into a large black crow that flew away croaking curses into the night sky. A few claimed she simply walked backward into the forest, growing smaller and more transparent with each step until she was nothing but shadow and regret. But all agreed on one thing: Nena was gone from their world, taking her evil intentions with her. The diviner nodded with satisfaction. The balance is restored. Evil that hides in darkness cannot survive when exposed to light. As for Ego, she stood weeping at the edge of the gathering, finally understanding the true cost of her mother's ambitions. For 7 years, she had enjoyed attention and gifts that rightfully belonged to Adiz, never questioning how her stepmother had arranged her sudden rise in status. Now she faced the consequences of benefits she had not earned through her own merit. The villagers looked at her with suspicion and disappointment, wondering what role she had played in her mother's schemes. Her world had collapsed as completely as if it too had been trapped in a calabash. In the days that followed, Ego discovered what it meant to be truly alone. The friends who had flattered her when she wore expensive clothes and jewelry stopped visiting when they learned the source of her former wealth. Suitors who had once shown mild interest vanished like smoke when her connection to Nena's evil became known. Everywhere she went, people whispered and pointed. Children who had once respected her now ran away when she approached. Market traders who had once competed for her business now served her reluctantly, if at all. "Look at her," the women murmured as she passed. All these years she lived off stolen blessings. No wonder nothing good came of her life. Ego tried to defend herself, insisting she had known nothing of her mother's actions. But her years of arrogance and cruelty had left her with no friends willing to believe her innocence. She had been raised to think she deserved the best of everything without earning it through her own efforts. Now, stripped of her mother's dark support, she discovered she had no skills, no genuine relationships, and no character to sustain her. Within a month, she had left the village entirely, seeking a place where her family's shame was not known. But shame, like shadows, follows wherever you go unless you find the courage to change what casts it. Some said she eventually learned humility through hardship and became a better person. Others claimed she remained bitter and angry until her dying day. Meanwhile, the village celebration of Adiz's return continued for 7 full days. People came from neighboring communities to witness the miracle and hear the story of how evil had been defeated by patience and truth. Adiz moved through the festivities like a queen returning to her rightful throne. But there was no arrogance in her bearing, no desire for revenge against those who had doubted or forgotten her. She greeted everyone with the same gentle kindness she had shown as a young girl, as if 7 years in a supernatural prison had only refined her natural goodness. Children who had been born after her disappearance felt drawn to her immediately, gathering around her to hear stories and learn songs. She taught them the melodies that had sustained her during her imprisonment, turning pain into beauty through the alchemy of her generous heart. The young men who had once competed for her hand in marriage approached her father again, hoping to renew their proposals. But Adiz was in no hurry to make such decisions. She had learned that rushing toward happiness often leads to heartbreak, while patience allows you to choose wisely. "I have been given back my life," she told her father. "Let me enjoy it fully before I share it with another." Her father, who had aged so greatly during her absence, began to look younger each day as joy returned to their home. As the weeks passed, Adiz settled back into village life, but with a new purpose. She began gathering the young girls of the community, teaching them not just traditional skills like cooking and weaving, but also lessons about inner strength and wisdom. "Beauty fades," she would tell them as they sat in the shade of the great baobab tree. "Character lasts forever. Kindness opens more doors than cleverness. And jealousy is a poison that kills the one who drinks it first." Under Adiz's guidance, the girls of the village grew up to be strong, confident women who supported each other instead of competing destructively. They learned to celebrate each other's successes and offer comfort during failures. The village became famous for producing wives who were both beautiful and wise, sought after not just for their appearance but for their character. And so, my children, this story comes to its end, but its lessons live on forever. As I have told you before, evil may seem to triumph for a season, but truth has deep roots that cannot be destroyed by any earthly power. The village still stands, and visitors can hear singing on quiet evenings, not the trapped cries of the imprisoned, but the joyful songs of those who know that love always finds a way to survive. This is the truth our ancestors wanted us to remember. Pass it on to your children, and they to theirs.